Good to have you all here. It's been a while. I haven't seen everybody, but here we are. We have an awesome conversation tonight. So, there's been an uptick, major uptick, because of beyond other things, a certain virus and other things that have caused a lot of men to complain about an issue that they don't know who to complain to because it's so embarrassing. And so we've been hearing a lot of this on the DNA company side. I've been hearing a lot of this on social media. I've been hearing it at conferences, and so there's this whole frustration around sexual health to the point where you're even seeing the biggest biohackers, sorry, I should say, health and wellness advocates, influencers, talking about their own personal journeys and what they're doing because they themselves, after doing everything right, are still struggling. And it's a question of age, it's a question of environment, it's a question of things that have happened to us in the last little while. It's a question of stress. It's just a question of all these components that add up to this dysfunction, both in men and women. And so there's pills. We know there's pills, but whoever's here isn't necessarily looking for a pill to be the answer, right? And I would agree with that. If we can figure out what's actually going wrong, what's actually broken, why is this happening, why is my body changing, then maybe a pill isn't the only answer. And we have some incredible people here tonight who have been doing exactly that. And only that, they have the tools. And not only that, they've been testing the tools and things are working. So we're going to invite everyone to join now. First of all, Dr. Nielsen's here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Kasha?
That's amazing. It's been a while since you and I chatted online like this, so it's good to talk to you.
It
In
is.
fact, the last time was when we had a podcast together about you and your crazy story, which is so inspiring, right? Yeah. And then we have a couple of guests here who will introduce right now. So,
Absolutely.
Dr. Nielsen, why don't you go ahead and introduce them?
Okay. So we're so excited tonight about, let's talk about sex. It's something that we don't want to talk about, but we do want to talk about. And most of us are doing it, or at least we're trying to do it, but maybe some of us are having trouble. So tonight is a gloves off, very honest talk about what works, what doesn't work, how to get it working again, both what your DNA says and practical application. And we're super excited tonight to have representatives from the Sexual Wellness Centers of America. And one of their founders, just like we have our founder, Kashif, who we know, love, adore, and he is followed all over the world because he just brings so much practical knowledge, Dr. Jeff. And Dr. Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about you and how the Sexual Wellness Center started? Because I know that a lot of people are going to say, the what? The who? We've heard of Cancer Centers of America or Diabetes Centers, but who knew? So talk to us about what happened.
Well, and thank you, first of all, for having me on tonight. This is amazing and it's a great opportunity, and I feel very honored to be here. My story is a very different, unique story. Everybody's got a story. Mine, I lived in a world of the certified financial planning world, investment banker, that kind of stuff for 17 years. At 40 years old, I all of a sudden went from thinking and performing like a rock star in a bedroom to not so much. I just couldn't perform anymore for nothing. It wasn't working. Totally unacceptable in my mindset, because mentally I was there. Mentally I was, let's go, I want to do this. Physically, no, wasn't happening. I sold my book of business and dove into massive research and development because I don't like pills. I don't like the Western medicine philosophy of there's a pill for this and a pill for that. If you can't focus, you take this little red pill. If you can't get an erection, you take the little blue pill. If you can't,
Well, it is a symptom stomping. So they
yeah,
stomp on
exactly.
symptoms rather than getting to root cause.
That's the
And
Western
that's one of
medicine.
the reasons we love DNA is because we can see inside and look at root cause and then
Absolutely.
do shifts. So you were looking for root cause.
I was looking for the problem, and interestingly enough, I want to give anybody on here tonight hope. 58 years old and all systems are go and everything's a good thing. Uh, and I was able to figure out how to not put a Band-Aid on it, but to reverse erectile dysfunction. Everything's good. There's always other problems. You got mental blocks. There's other factors that can be contributed.
We know the body heals. And we know, the DNA company has 73 genes we deal with that are actionable. So you've got actionable steps for people to
And
get back in action.
I was able to uncover that, as what you just said, our bodies were designed to regenerate. Our bodies were designed to fix malfunctions and to fix problems. And when you realize that everything's regenerative, you just don't know what you don't know. Let's figure it out. And so,
Right.
so that's where I'm at today. So now, once I figured it out over 15-year process, I said, it's time to go public with this. I used to just teach a lot of my science on a speaking circuit and things of that nature, but so I realized, well, it's a waste of my work. So we were issued the only patent in the world for reversing erectile dysfunction. It's, again, not a Band-Aid. It's not a separate thing.
So let's introduce Tim, because Tim, you're one of the clinic owners, right?
Yes, I am.
So you have clients every day that come with stories and you give them hope. Is that right?
We do. And it's interesting how this started. So I spent the last 10 years prior to being a clinic owner as co-founder of a software marketing company. And my clients were aesthetic clinics, integrative medicine, functional guys like Jeff. And so I was looking at this from the business side. So when we sold, Crystal Clear was the name of that company, we sold that, 2 of my clients were starting a clinic. And the challenge that I saw at the time, and Jeff and I were just getting to know each other, the challenge that I saw at the time where they were basically, and Kosh, we were talking a little bit about this before we came on, the existing treatment, pretty much everyone was doing the same thing. There would be a biologic component, meaning a P shot type of thing. There would be shockwave therapy, and then maybe they would combine that with hormones. And that was it. Well, even the best case scenario with that protocol is you're going to get about a 60-70% success rate. And as a business person, that scared me. That means 30 to 40% of the people we see are going to be at some level of dissatisfaction. So at the time, Jeff and I were talking about, he was angling to get this patent. He had done all this research. And I said, let me see the research. We looked at the research, and immediately I'm like, this is what we're doing. So I partnered with Dr. Robert Marshall. He had a small men's clinic in Oak Brook, Illinois. And we started treating men with the it's called genomics, if I could say that.
So your clinic started working with? Our
clinic started working with live clients. I'm not a doctor myself, so I partnered with a doctor and a nurse practitioner. And so we started seeing clients in the clinic in October. We have almost 60 men in the protocol right now. The results are unbelievable. It's game-changing, life-changing, and it's great. It really is great. And a lot of the guys that come to us, and we're only treating men right now, although we will be, we're so excited, we're going to be treating women soon. Most of them have tried and run through Cialis and Viagra, and they've kind of gotten to the end of the functionality of those, medications, and they're looking for something a little bit more sustainable, right? Okay. And what's interesting is if you look at, and again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not giving clinical advice, but if you look at the causes of ED, right, it's relational. You need to have a partner, right, Kosh? That's the first thing. You'd have someone to have sex with. So it's relational, and then it's psychological, and we see a lot of that, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that. And then you have the physical aspect of it. And so one of the things that we really work hard on in the clinic is we probably can't get you a partner, but instilling the confidence in them. And that's what we hear back from our clients is, I just, when I looked at the science and I talked to the nurse practitioner, it gave me the confidence to know that this could work. And it's been a game changer for the clinic, and we're really grateful. So I appreciate it.
Well,
and I'm grateful to be here as well. And
tonight, and see if we're talking to men or women, to see if we're talking to, I know we've got our little magic back end that can pop that up. And we've got 68% women tonight. And a lot of them are here for information for themselves. So that could mean that we want to talk about some of the women's things that are coming in your clinics, as well as how they can help and support their partners. I know you do some hormone therapy. Some of them have tried some laser therapy. Not many have done or maybe know about shockwave. Some of them have, about half, 42% have played around with the ED shots or other. There's about 56% that are interested in the vaginal atrophy and 44% in erectile dysfunction. So if it's okay with all of us, I'd like to go a little bit of both. And we've got primarily a lay audience tonight.
Great.
So since your focus started with men and you've had such success there, then we'll transition to women, if that's one thing. I'd like to go back to Cash for a second. Cash, we have so many people that are really coming, not only for sexual health, hormones, and longevity. What are you seeing in the clients that you're seeing as far as what's the big reveal in their DNA and what you're seeing in the environment right now?
So this problem is so prolific. It's kind of almost like an take it for granted expectation, like with age, this is going to happen, right? Function failure. And just the same, cardiovascular disease, still the #1 killer, still 50% of Americans expected to get it, still much more severe for women in terms of outcome than men. So it's not a coincidence when anyone here that has dove into their genome has learned about their endothelium and how your vasculature from head to toe has this lining in the inner membrane, this glycocalyx as it's called. And we know that not everyone has the same quality of hardware. And that's why with the exact same exposure, different outcomes. And that same endothelium runs through all of your internal linings, including into the penile shaft. And this is where we had this ramp up of, just like spike protein caused endothelial inflammation in the cardiovascular system, it was also in the penile shaft. But that's one example. There's many examples of what would do that, right? Just like stress would lead to hypertension, which would exhaust the cardiovascular system, also leads to that. And this is where what the guys are saying about psychological and then physical, they're hand in hand. It's like a shift in your context can affect hardware, right? Who are you talking to? Who are your relationship? Who's your relationship with? The quality of the relationship, which brings me back to a question. In as much as you just asked me a question, brings me back to a question for the guys, which is, when you say psychological, shockwave, hormones, etc., where do you start? Like, do you start by saying, let's actually, okay, pills aside, right? Everyone here is looking for the real answer, the root cause answer. Where is it first? Calm the mind down, nervous system, you have anxiety, or is it let's use shockwave? And you'll see these biohacker guys with these vibrating wands that electrocute a very sensitive part of their body to make sure that they break up atrophy. And now the same thing is being suggested for women. Or do you get straight into the regenerative exosome type stuff? So what is the right sequence for someone to go through?
Dr.
Jeff?
J?
You're asking me. Well, first of all, if I may, I'd like to dispel a couple rumors or a couple mistaken philosophies, if you will. For decades and decades and decades, medicine has been chasing blood flow as the problem of erectile dysfunction. And I will tell you, blood flow is the result of erectile dysfunction, is not the cause of erectile dysfunction. My research has proven these things, and I'm going to talk about a couple things that I know, unless we've talked before, are going to sound very strange, very foreign. And I've got tons of science and corroborating papers to back every bit of it up. And I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody. It's what I call a bad sponge. And that's the problem. So what happens, and I'll make this quick because I know our time is limited, but to understand erectile dysfunction, you're going to have to understand this part of it. And ironically enough, with women, it's the same thing. The only difference between a clitoris and a penis is one has a urethra and one doesn't. So the same exact tissue is involved. Obviously, one's smaller than the other, but it's the same thing internally. So we treat women the same way we treat men. And we add extra step to it in treating the vaginal canal as well, which has been done for many, many years now. But at some point, we all know hormonally, we stop producing testosterone in our 20s somewhere. at about 2% a year. What I was able to prove and was completely unaware of is as that level drops, and this is where medical books drive me crazy, because if you pull any lab report, it says you're normal, your testosterone level's normal. And what is normal? Well, between 250 and 900. What is that? It's all over the board. And by the way, what's the definition of normal? Because what's normal for you is not normal for me. So I scrapped that and started saying, what's optimal? Because here's what happens is when our levels drop to a magical number level that's unique to every individual, that activates the aging process. It's not the way people have been taught that we age and then we lose. No, we lose and that activates the aging process. Well, when that aging process is activated, the first thing that goes south on both men and women is the production of collagen. Women see it primarily in their faces, is where it shows up first. And this is why we have the 30-something crowds flocking in and getting Botox and fillers and whatever, because they're going, oh my God, I didn't look like this 2 years ago. And they think they're looking so old and because they got 3 wrinkles. Well, it's because the collagen is depleting. Well, unfortunately, men, we don't realize it, but we see it have the same problem. And it mainly attacks the penis first. And that is in the corpus cavernosum, which 2 big spongy tubes, the job of which is to absorb the blood the veins send in. And I use this example. It's not an actual, you can't take me to court on this. I say, when you're in your prime and your sponge fills up with blood, it fills up so much that it activates a valve. It's not a real valve. There's no valve in there that you turn off and on, but it cuts off the blood flow out. Okay, so here's the problem. Get all this blood in, you're not absorbing it all because your sponge is deteriorating. So the first symptom of erectile dysfunction is called the venous leak. I can get an erection, but I can't keep the erection. So that's because blood's flowing in, your sponge is bad, it's starting to pull back out. So because of my laser background.
So you got a leaky sponge.
You got a leaky sponge. It's just like on your kitchen
Just
sink.
checking.
When you open a brand new sponge at the kitchen, it absorbs everything.
Yep.
6 months later, it's like, this thing is shrunk. Man, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's becoming a problem and you got to throw it away and get a new sponge. Our bodies are designed to be regenerative. Let's regenerate what we got and fix it. So I started on this mission. I have a major laser background and I always joke and say, I will not admit or deny that I may have burned a penis or 2, including my own, trying to figure this out. Because I knew that I knew that I knew that I knew that I knew. What do women do every day in med spas? They use laser technology to fix the collagen in their face, to pull it tight, get rid of wrinkles, da 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 da. If I can get the right amount of heat in the corpus tissue, I can fix the collagen. How in the crap do I do that? That's how this whole process we went down the road on. So it's not so much starting with, well, blood, well, this, well, that. No, it really is sexual wellness, in my proven opinion, is a full doctrine of medicine. We have to make sure your hormones are at their optimal level, because we can fix it all, but you'll degenerate and go right back. So through shockwave, we can generate new blood vessels, actually regenerate new blood vessels. You can clean up plaque blockage, which is a major problem. You know, we've heard of Peyronie's disease, things like that. That's a severe plaque issue most of the time. Could be a scarring issue as well, but most of the time it's plaque. But then it's the degeneration of collagen in the sponge. So we have to fix all of that. So it's not just attacking one thing at a time. You got to treat the whole scope. Same with women. You got to treat the whole scope. We have to fix the blood flow, fix the vaginal dryness. Vaginal atrophy is a major problem, mostly postmenopausal. But guys, listen, there's a problem in our country today. And in just the last 5 days, I've had a 32-year-old who his testosterone level came back in the low 500s at 32. Had a 24-year-old test at 328, 24. That's a whole nother study I'm working on right now.
Well, and I think one of the things that we're realizing is our environment is so toxic.
Absolutely.
And people are not detoxifying. And so that's why we're seeing younger and younger degeneration.
This is why
And
DNA.
that's why,
This is
yeah,
why.
that's why the DNA company is saying, you know, if you know your inner DNA, if you know your inner, are you a co-dominant, an estrogen dominant? Are you an estrogen dominant male? You know, and as opposed to androgen dominant.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I also think it's interesting, and Cash is much more versed in this than I am. When you talk about the emotions involved in this, I think the DNA company was one of the first that really looked at the DRD genes. Do you get dopamine? Is it out quickly? What are your moods? A lot of places will tell you need to lift weights. A lot of places can tell you you've got MTHFR, but Cash was really, I think, a big part of what is our mood and behavior, and how can we accept pleasure or do we not accept pleasure? Because I mean, you guys could maybe add some collagen, but if somebody can't accept pleasure or self-flagellates, then there's an issue. Cash,
Yeah.
will you go into some of the whole brain stuff that happens when we're talking about emotions here related to our personal well-being and sexual health and ability to accept pleasure?
Yeah, so it's multiple things. It's not only in the moment, the pleasure, but it's also the recall and fearing the moment. It's also the anxiety of the moment, and it's lastly the meaning of this loss. So in the moment, it's like, can I actually bind dopamine and experience what I'm supposed to experience? And how long does it last? Meaning, how quickly do I get distracted? So that leakage we're talking about, well, if you're not in the moment, which is possible for many people, like what's the next shiny object that's getting my attention? And my biochemistry then receives those messages and says, we're moving on to something else. And this happens to people where they're literally not in the moment for long enough. And it's taken by their partner as you're not interested, you don't care, you don't love me, why aren't you putting effort in? As opposed to, I literally am reward seeking and I want to move on to something else, right? So it requires a higher level of intensity to keep them engaged. And this is where you'll see some freaky things going on to keep them engaged, right? And that you'll notice habits are extreme for extreme neurology, right? The other big one we see is the when you start to experience something like this, and Dr. Jeff would love to sit and work with you on this and put sort of research together and create more precision for people also. You know, and you'll see that some people, day one was bad. Okay, never experienced this before. You know, it hasn't been like this before. I guess I'm getting old. And a smirk, remark, poking of the partner, making fun of you to some degree, triggers the trauma of the first event. And when I say trauma, it doesn't mean you need to lie on a psychotherapist's bed. It just means that there's genetic expression telling you that this is a repeat of that last scenario. Watch out, right? And they'll come back with the belief that there's a problem.
Mhm.
And even just seeing the bed is triggering bad news is about to come before you even start, right? And the last bit of it is for people that have, and this is both beneficial and kind of drags people through the mud. The genetics around how deeply people believe things and the impact, the meaning, the weight. And so when you don't do a good job with neuroplasticity, um, I had bad function, I have erectile dysfunction versus somebody else who does a really good job with neuroplasticity, like I had a bad day.
Right.
Right? I was stressed today. I didn't eat properly today. Maybe I shouldn't do this after going to the gym. I'm tired. Versus what? I have erectile dysfunction. And then that's what you're telling your brain, right? And but just the same is true for the solution. So you'll find some people will actually resolve the problem faster too, right? Like this deep belief in like Dr. Jeff's going to help me, and he will. The stuff he's talking about is incredible. How quickly is it going to work? There's also some you'll see variability there too. So yeah, certainly the mind, and it's interesting because Tim brought it up too. You know, it's a big part of where people get stuck. So you know, one question I
Yes.
had also,
Ka-
yeah,
Kash, can I
Yeah, let me throw,
ask you a question too?
Let me
Hold
ask
on,
you-
Jeff. Let me,
hold on.
go ahead.
Can you tie in, because what you're saying is brilliant. I love this. And yes, I want to work with you like tomorrow. Can you tie in the fear prospect of, as well, everything you say, because
yeah,
in my experience, the first time he decided it didn't want to work tonight, every time thereafter, fear of, oh my God, what if it don't work? Oh my God, I let her down.
Yep.
And you get so many stories in your head, right? Tie that into what you're just talking about, because that's what you just said is brilliant.
The ruminating inner voice, which is genetically driven. And so the baseline emotions are sad, mad, happy, and fear. And fear plays into this whole story. This is probably the biggest problem, is fear.
Big time.
Fear is anxiety. Anxiety eventually equals trauma. And the trauma is, it's not just the physical dysfunction, it's me convincing my body that it's permanent. And trauma equals upregulation of genetic expression to keep it on. Your body's really good at learning trauma. It's very difficult to forget. You have to very intentionally do work to turn it off and forget, right? And
So
so,
I'm
yeah,
gonna add a
100
female perspective here.
That's good stuff.
I'm gonna add a female perspective. Okay, a
Sure.
guy has a very physical reaction, okay, stands to attention, okay?
Yeah.
But a woman with her orgasm or lack of orgasm, or was that an orgasm? Or when a guy goes, did you come? And she's like, sure. I mean, there's a lot of trauma there too with performance anxiety. Now, it may not be as evident, it may not, but I think there's a lot of shame where women say, I either don't perform enough or I'm not satisfying enough, especially if a guy starts having trauma, like I can't get it up or keep it up, then a woman's like, I'm not sexy enough, I'm not skinny enough, my boobs aren't big enough, I don't orgasm, I don't please him. I mean, we have this whole big trauma cycle going on. And then, so how do we get back? How do we pull out of the trauma and get back to, let me fix me, let you fix you, and then let's reconnect so we can really support each other?
I think it goes back to what, Jeff and Tim were saying, which is, so somebody experiences what Dr. Stephanie just said. The outcome is going to be step back, pull back. We're not even going to try it a few months down the road, right? The embarrassment, the fear, the trauma, the I don't feel sexy, I don't feel loved, all that stuff starts playing in your head, ruminating, and those are the thoughts that you bring into the bedroom over time. And it goes back to what these guys said. If you put in the effort to really treat this as what it is, it's physical dysfunction, lack of generation, and go do something about it and give yourself the confidence, right? That word that they use is really important here. Confidence. Touch it, boom, it's working, right?
That's right.
It needs to be like, right? And so that giving yourself the actual function back gives you the confidence, which literally is like keeping a household together, right? It's the
Because we
difference
don't want to
between
rub
the quality
anybody
of
the wrong
relationship.
way, but if we rub them the right way, everybody's confidence comes back.
Well, but
Yeah.
what he's saying is factual when it comes for women. Like the number one thing I hear about women is they hope, this is a sad but true fact, hundreds of times over, women hope their men get ED because the thought of them having penetration makes them cringe because the last 10 times they did it, it hurt so bad, right? So once we get the atrophy cleared up and we have the wetness again, whoa, it's not so bad. Then once we get nerve regeneration going again, all of a sudden, wait a minute, I'm enjoying this, right? And so physiologically, we can get you to a point where you start to think, hey, this isn't as bad as, this is like it used to be. This is fun like it used to be. And this is good stuff.
So let's dive deeper for a second, because I used to think that, first of all, bioidentical hormones or hormone therapy. So like, I'm never going to need those. I'm never going to get fat. I'm never going to get slow. I'm never going to not want sex. Well, you start getting fat, you start getting slow, you start going, maybe, maybe not. Okay. And you go, oh shit, I'm right in along with everybody else. But then you start hearing about some of the girls, some of the fancy girls, maybe getting laser vaginal touch-ups. And you're like, how vain must they be that they're having laser on their vajayjay? But listening to the collagen, I mean, I love the idea. I do laser, a couple times a year to stimulate collagen. I never thought about it down there. I kind of thought the whole laser regeneration thing was not a collagen thing. I thought it was like shaping and sculpting, and I'm like, I'm pretty enough, don't have any complaints.
Yeah.
So what actually happens? Because I know you're moving into that female world. What actually happens with that whole laser regeneration or collagen regeneration for the girls? Come on, girls, this is really cutting edge stuff.
Yeah, we've been treating women from the beginning, and laser vaginal regeneration has been around probably since 2010, maybe even a little bit sooner. Been around for a minute, and there's a couple philosophies behind it, and most of which I don't agree with. There's radio frequency devices, and not to bore anybody with physics, but radio frequency has no chromophore. A chromophore is an absorption point of energy. So with a radio frequency, you're blindly putting energy in the vaginal canal, hoping that the heat by itself will tighten it up and make the rugae of the vaginal canal, which is what makes you wet again, make all that work. That's one number, and it's very uncomfortable. It's very awkward. It's basically about that wand, about that long. That's got what's called a bipolar pole on each side, and you're basically doing this for 30 minutes. Well,
So I'm hearing that's a no.
Yeah, that's kind of really uncomfortable, and it's awkward.
Okay, check. What's next?
Then
What works?
Then there's the CO2 ablative route.
Okay.
And just saying that, I'm going to ablate your vaginal canal. What that does is it ablates it and it creates scar tissue in there. Well, anytime you get scar tissue, the tissue contracts around the scar tissue, right? So you are going to get tightening of the vaginal canal. And anytime you put heat in that area, you're going to get a cellular regeneration. So you're going to get nerve endings, reconnecting, things like that.
So women know about CO2 and Fraxel and stuff for like a mini face makeover or tightening of their skin, or almost like a mini facelift kind of thing. So you're talking about the same type of thing vaginally.
Yeah. Now there's only one or two lasers out there that do have a non-ablative laser approach that is, okay, there's two kinds of injuries we do to our body. There's a mechanical injury and a thermal injury. Okay. Mechanical injury is obviously cutting skin, breaking a bone. Thermal injury is injury caused by nothing but heat. Your body doesn't know the difference. It's injured. So your body rushes to fix that injury with collagen remodeling, all right? And so you're able to treat the vaginal canal for tightness, for clitoral atrophy, to get those nerves back. And every woman is going to go through at some point vaginal relaxation syndrome. It's just life. When that happens, your vaginal canal goes from a tight circle to a loose oval. Well, that loose oval, what happens, the vaginal canal is lined with rugae, which are like ridges. Those ridges go flat because it went from this to this. So they just flatten out. That's when atrophy sets in and the dryness is horrific.
So is it dryness, or is that when somebody can prolapse as well?
Both. Great point. Okay. Both. Yeah, absolutely. That's when you start seeing the prolapse issues. And by the way, the laser also, if you do laser therapy in the vagina, it also treats the pelvic floor. So it helps prevent that kind of stuff. And it will fix mild to moderate. Now, if you're moderate plus to severe, you already need, let's talk about
other therapies.
Yeah, let's talk about some surgical things. But if you just have mild to moderate incontinence, I dribble a little bit when I sneeze, fix it now. Don't wait. Get laser stuff now, because that'll tighten that right up and preserve you for many more years instead of having to go through a surgical procedure.
Tim, I know we haven't gotten to talk very much. One of the questions I have for you, kind of as the marketing guy and as somebody who's running a center, is, do you have guys come in and then their wives see the results and they say, hey, what about me? Or do you have women saying, hey, I want to get this back. He's too embarrassed to talk about this. Can we talk? And then I'm going to drag him in.
So it's interesting that you asked that question, because a lot of times when we're talking to men, we try, particularly in the consultation stage in our clinic, if there's a significant other involved, we want them to be involved in that conversation and that decision. One, from a business perspective, I don't want the guy at the end of the consultation to say, I need to go home and talk to my partner. I've lost something, right? So if we can get the partner involved, that's great. And a lot of times you'll hear the partners, you know, the man is thinking about the money and do I want to do this? And of course, you know, and the greatest line we can get from the partner is, would you do it for me? Right. And so then there is this effect in it, which is affecting our decision now to start treating women, which we're going to do within the next 6 weeks. To Jeff's point, he becomes a tiger again. And now she's getting the feeling like, uh-oh, I got to catch up. And then she then wants to engage in that treatment as well. And so it's interesting to see the relationship between the partners and how that dynamic changes, right? And a lot of guys, this is the interesting part too, when they come to us, many don't want their partner to know. So they'll say, well, hold on, I'm not, you know, we have this great, this gentleman that we treated, he's in 10 months, doing amazing. He had, just to put it in perspective for you, in 4 years, he had sex vaginally twice. He was in a long-term relationship. They were kind of okay with it. He decided that he was going to seek treatment. We began treating him, and he was a 62-year-old guy, avid runner. And he told his girlfriend, you know, at the outset that he was going to a clinic for plantar fasciitis because he was running. Didn't even want her to know. But this is the interesting.
Well, some was flat, but he said it was his feet. It was just a slightly
this
higher.
is the interesting thing, and this is where guys and gals are all screwed up on this stuff, in my opinion. Is so after a month, he started getting some sensation back, and he wanted to try to get something going. And we have a 45-minute testimony. He came on and shared his whole story. And he said after a month, we had sex for the first time. He said it wasn't perfect, but it was great. And then she was kind of like, where are you going? And so he explained to her, this is what I'm doing. And her reaction was amazing. She's like, that's it? Like why would you hide that from me? I think that's great. I'm proud of you, right? And so I think this format is great because one of the things and it goes back to what you guys were talking about as it relates to confidence, the more we can encourage men and women to openly discuss their vulnerabilities, that changes everything, right? So when you talk about sympathetic and parasympathetic, and Jeff can speak to this better than I can, when we get nervous, right, that fight or flight response that Kash alluded to, we send blood to our eyes and to our heart, everywhere except where it needs to go, right? And that becomes, and there's this idea that we need to get fired up to have sex. It's the opposite. We need to relax. And when we relax, blood flows to where it's supposed to. And so a big part of that is communication between male and female. And I think the same thing goes for the female, right? To say, hey, so she's leaking a little bit, not feeling 100% confident, maybe not. Like encouraging open conversation changes everything. And so if a guy's got a, you know, with our protocol, he's got a 97% chance, clinically speaking, of getting back to where he was. But open, honest conversation is the key between men and women. I really do believe that. And on our site, it says, it's okay, it's just ED. But I think that applies, this gal I interviewed, Kimberly, same thing. She was talking about the importance of open conversation between her and her partner because she went through the protocol. We're still treating her 3 years later. And he wanted to catch up. And it's so funny that Jeff mentioned the oval, because she was talking about that. She said, you know, I knew he was penetrating me, but then she did this thing where she like kind of got lost in and then I went through treatment and she's like, I felt great. He felt great. And then she talked about Kegeling, to your point of what happens. And she's like, for the first time, I could actually feel that connection. And so, and then they talked about it.
And the connection there is going to lead to a brain connection. And the brain connection is going to put off all sorts of feel-good hormones.
Confidence.
Feel-good hormones go, then the connection goes deeper.
Confidence is everything. And the ability to encourage two people to communicate, today's not my day, to go back to what Jeff and Dr. Jeff and Kosh were saying, It's not that, you know, you've got this chronic condition. Today wasn't your day, right?
Yeah.
And as someone who's been married 32 years, we've all had misfires, right? I'm
Yeah.
57 years old.
Yeah.
I've had misfires.
Well,
And it's like, hey,
and the DNA companies started with a single test, and then people kept coming back to Kosh going, what else do you got? What else do you got?
Yeah.
And so the expansion of our GI test and our longevity test and our new other medical tests. I mean, Kosh, can you talk a little bit about why we keep pulling in so many diverse practitioners and people, and how it all pulls back into understanding the core of what you're made of, and how we continue to support all that whole person?
Yeah, so the big challenge, this is the very first thing you said, Dr. Stephanie Saint, was that medicine, allopathic medicine, as we know it, is diagnose and prescribe, which is what is it called and what do I tell you to take? And that's it. Right? It's like, how do we manage what you have? So the real healthcare is, why did it happen? That should be the real the investigation is not what is it called, it's why did it happen? And you're hearing that tonight, and what Dr. Jeff's saying, in terms of a very big why did it happen? Right? It's no longer masking like here's a pill for the what. So we're finding that, you know, kind of the other half, DNA is personalization, but the other half of that is the gut. You know, in as much as you have your own DNA, you have even more foreign DNA in your body from your gut microbiome than your own human DNA. And then there's epigenetics. There's even measuring in time. What is your DNA saying? So we're just learning that there's so much more we can do to read our biology and understand who we are, where we're at, and then answer those whys. Because if you start to see those pieces, you know, and then there's great research like this going on out there, looking at the why of disease states. So we no longer have to think of them as disease states. They are lack of maintenance states, essentially. They are lack of nutrient, lack of something that was your DNA and your unique biology needed you to do, and you didn't do, or you maybe did too much of something you couldn't handle, right? Which leads to this broken biology in a state that you then label. So in something as simple as collagen could be a culprit for many things. Gut health also, you know, we're learning so much more about leaky gut being this primary driver for dementia and cardiovascular disease and diabetes, even cancers, and people fixing it with bovine collagen and aloe vera, as opposed to Alzheimer's pills and Lipitor, and the list goes on. Because what happened is the tight wall junctions of your gut started to open up and get atrophied and needed an ingredient called collagen to seal them up. Sounds familiar. It's what Dr. Jeff was just saying, is that there's tissue in the penile shaft. The same thing with the vaginal tissue requires this ingredient. And guess what? If you decide to eat processed foods, become a vegan, don't eat any bone broth, etc., you don't get the nutrient that your body assumed based on your ancestral habits that you would be getting, that it uses as a building block, right? So and this is why there's a whole, you know, biggest healthcare budget we've ever seen, right? So, and going back to that thought of collagen, one last thing I would ask Dr. Jeff, you have an audience here who is proactive. Proactive is somewhat knowledgeable in this realm. A lot of them are probably going to say collagen, collagen, collagen. Should I go get a collagen supplement? Should I go make some bone broth? Is that good enough, or are we saying that there's far more needed to stimulate that to correct a problem of this nature? Do we need more?
So great. I love this. I hear this all the time. I am not a fan of collagen supplements orally taken. What happens is your digestive system pretty much kills anything good before it's absorbed really into your body. Now, having said that, there are injectable collagens that you can do that I have seen under a microscope with my eyes that do some amazing changes to your collagen. Well, nobody wants to go have their doctor, only a concierge doctor, I think, would be willing to do something like that, to prescribe something like that, but nobody wants to live their life doing injections. The only natural way to remodel, the medical term is remodel collagen. you're remodeling the collagen fibers that you have. And the only natural way to thicken that collagen up and make it vibrant again is heat or injury. What I said, a thermal injury or a mechanical injury. So the more heat we put in at a safe rate, the better of the thermal reaction you get without an ablative reaction or breaking the skin or anything like that. You can do it through thermal reaction only and get a great, phenomenal collagen remodeling.
Yeah, that makes sense. We've seen that, and then there's so many different types of collagen that serve different purposes, but more and more you're finding, even just starting with the cosmetics world, like plastic surgeons saying that they don't even bother anymore. You know, they're not seeing outcomes. So you need collagen, but a lot of what we think as a micronutrient we can put into our body in a condensed form is not how we got it from food. You know, there's a difference between eating an animal nose to tail versus adding powder to water, right?
It's the same
It's
thing
not
as
quite the same.
it's the same thing as taking liver pills. Do not do what eating liver does.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as we metabolize food. There's a breakdown process where we get the nutrients out. The biggest problem we have in our country today is engineered foods and lab engineered foods and all the junk that's put into foods. Our bodies are going haywire trying to break that stuff down, and we're not getting the nutrients. We're getting more calories and less nutrients. The nutrient dense food that we used to eat is not the same today. Is not the same.
Yeah, for sure.
When you
Uh,
get, we used
Guys,
to,
I know that we could keep going, but let's answer a few of the questions that we have from our guests tonight. And because I know we could keep talking so much more, but we've got a few things. And this is actually a really great one, probably for you, Dr. Jeff. Are there any reasons why someone wouldn't be eligible or wouldn't be a good candidate for your program?
any reasons why they would not be? No.
Is there anything that excludes someone from being a candidate for your program or for the he shot? I know there's the P shot out there, which has its place, but you guys do a he shot, which is, from what my research has been, probably a little bit more advanced. But your program of laser, collagen, you know, shots, supplements, hormones, is there anybody that you would exclude from being a candidate for?
I wouldn't.
program?
I will tell you, in the study, we dealt with a lot of different types of people. And I will say the worst one, we have been able to get some results from everyone. 97.2% have achieved success in our program. The ones that didn't were smokers, obese, and pretty bad diabetics, both type 1 and type 2. So we can help anybody. I'm just saying that if you don't take general, decent, good care of yourself, we'll fix it, but it's probably
Do the best you can, but maybe a lesser percentage.
Yeah,
Can
and
I
it's-
bring up an important point though? Jeff, can you speak to the issue of hormone management and men of baby making age or desirous of having kids?
So unfortunately, we live in a very litigious society. And so we make people sign waivers if you're in baby making ages, so to speak, or desire to have family. We will probably not treat you hormone replacement wise just because of the litigation that you could change your mind one day and say, well, because you did this, now I can't. The true science that is readily available out there, less than 2% of men that go through hormone replacement therapy drop in sperm count in the first 10 years. All right. So if you're like a couple years, you're like, you know what, I really need to get this going, but I might want to have another child in the next 1 or 2 years. Well, get it going, because it takes so long for the testicle degeneration to stop, your body to stop the sperm development. So just because you're on hormone replacement does not mean within 6 months, you are now going to be shooting blanks. It doesn't work that fast. It doesn't work that way at all.
Right. Okay, that was a great answer. Cash, the next one's for you. Are there anything in the DNA that the DNA company looks at that shows a higher risk or likelihood of ED?
Yeah. So it's the things we talked about, which is mood, big one. You know, for a lot of men, anxiety is the driver of function. So that's a big one, right? And then the other one is both, I think Tim and Jeff both talked about blood flow, which sounds like, as Dr. Jeff said, is the outcome, not the cause, but we still look at it in terms of nitric oxide delivery. So vasodilation, NOS3, the gene is actually called NOS3, which determines the efficiency of utilization of nitric oxide, so the ability to dilate. ACE in hypertension, blood pressure flow and regulation. And then the endothelium, the very first thing I talked about, which is how sensitive is that endothelium to this change that Dr. Jeff's been talking about all night, right? So, the sponge aside, but the actual shaft and, you know, the main infrastructure there, which is the endothelium. So there's that. I would also say hormones. So, you know, testosterone levels are not what they used to be across the board societally, right? So it's from water to food to cosmetics to plastics, all disrupting hormones. So both men and women, some do not produce enough testosterone, do not have effective androgen receptors. You know, often you measure a testosterone level in somebody, like things are good, but the receptor doesn't work, not binding it. So things aren't good, right? So we can determine that genetically. That's sometimes detective work that creates a big aha moment. And then it's often the, you know, so this conversation about hormones. The intention is, I'm giving you testosterone because you need more testosterone. What if your CYP19A1 gene is really overdoing its job, and that aromatization, that conversion of testosterone into estrogen is happening at an extremely rapid rate? We've worked with NHL hockey players that will take testosterone and grow man boobs, gynecomastia, not the outcome they were seeking, because that gene determines how efficiently you convert testosterone to estrogen. And so sometimes you didn't need to add, you just need to slow down this conversion. So I can go on and on, but those are some of the big ones, right, that I would point to. Vitamin D is another one, which undervalued, but in terms of if your genetics around vitamin D are horrible, it's definitely going to affect hormones.
Yeah. And I'm going to jump in for a second from a women's perspective. As I said earlier, you know, I thought I would never stop having desire, and my desire has been far better than a lot of women, but I jumped on bioidenticals early. You know, if a woman starts having no desire, first thing you've got to check is those hormones, you know, and understanding exactly what Kosh just said, your pathways, knowing the DNA pathway of, do I break down to healthy hormone metabolites? Do I break down to unhealthy? Can I process vitamin D? Or do I not process? People go prostate. They say, I can go outside and I'm for 15 minutes outside, I get all the vitamin D I need. No, you don't. Not unless you have 90% of your body naked, not unless it's the peak of the day, not unless you have the right receptors, not unless you've got the right diet. I think we really forget, or we never knew, that there are genes that don't work there. So if a woman has low libido, sadly, I get a lot of women that come to me. They're like, I went to my PCP. He gave me some Premarin, which is horse urine. No thanks. I don't whinny, you know, I'm not going to take horse urine. And then said, you know, I didn't need any more testosterone. I'd be just fine. It's just a normal part of aging. They gave them one thing out of 3, but they didn't look at the whole pathways. And if they're on hormones, they're not looking annually at their metabolites. Am I metabolizing to the good ones? Am I metabolizing to the bad ones? Am I setting myself up for chronic inflammation? Guys, inflammation is at the bottom of everything. So as a woman, first get your hormones tested, but by somebody who works with hormones, okay? Second thing is get your DNA tested so that you know which pathway and which tendencies you have. The thing about DNA is it will give you, I say it's like a house. You can have 5 houses in a neighborhood and they all look similar, but what are they like inside? Do they have 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms? Are they modern? Are they traditional? You don't know what's inside until you see the inside. And then the epigenetics is what do we do from the outside? And the guys just mentioned it. You know, are you eating phytoestrogens do you have microplastics that you're smearing on your face every day that are hormone disruptors? Are you drinking from a very soft, squishy water bottle that's gotten warm in your car and now it's leached the hormone disruptors in, and you're drinking that water that's been hot and cold, and then your hormones are being forced down the bad way? There are ways to get this back by knowing your numbers, by looking at your inflammation, by stabilizing your blood sugar, by really making sure to, really understand the pathways and working with a solid, whether it's an aesthetics clinic, whether it's a sexual health clinic, whether it's the DNA clinic, and with people who can look at your genes and look at your other tests and work you down those pathways. So, and one more question, and I'll see if we have time for it. Go ahead.
I want to quantify, because I think there might be a little confusion. Cassius, we talked about blood flow as being a result of erectile dysfunction. The reason why that is, and it's not the cause, is because our body's sending in, this is why Cialis quits working and Viagra quits working, because our body's sending in blood, but the sponge isn't absorbing it. As we all know, our bodies are really great at overcompensating for injuries that we have. So what happens is your body communicates and says, you're not absorbing the blood I'm sending in. So the veins develop atrophy and shrink up and start sending less volume of blood in. So because you're not absorbing it, that's how your body overcompensates. So then you get a 75% erection and can't maintain it. And then, oh, you can't maintain that either. Okay, so we shrink up a little more and send less blood in. So now you get a 50%. So that's what I mean by blood flow is the result of the sponge not absorbing it all. Does that make sense? I just want to
It does.
Perfect sense, yeah.
Thank you.
What about red light therapy? I see several questions. Red light therapy is all the rage right now, for muscles, for acne, for facial regeneration. What about red light for vaginal atrophy or for ED?
Hair, you see that a lot.
Yeah.
Red light therapy is just a wavelength of light, like a laser. The problem with red light therapy is it's not strong enough to happen quickly. So you have to do a lot of treatments for a long period of time to get the full bang for your buck, so to speak. And then it comes into a profit and loss thing for clinics. I don't have the time to have you sit here for an hour. I only have one head device to grow hair, and red light therapy, it's laser energy is what it is. It's a wavelength of light, and it's energy of a light beam. So yes, it will work. It will work. It's just going to take a lot of work, a lot of period of time, if that makes sense.
So
I think people need to know also that what you hear about red light and it working is based on professional grade red light beds that are in a clinic.
Yes.
And then somebody will go to a consumer website and buy a panel and hang it on their wall. You're not getting the same thing. It's not the same saturation, same intensity. So that's a big one where, like, I saw the results. This guy said it works. Yeah, if you go buy a $40,000 or $50,000 bed, but a $300 panel is not the same thing.
Yeah,
That's right.
Right.
That's a great point. Thank you.
Right. So I know we've kind of getting close to the end of our time, and can you guys, we've got a lot of questions that I think would be better addressed if somebody contacts your clinics about post-prostate cancer. Can you help somebody? And very specific times and ages and things. So how do people reach out to you to get more information? Do you guys do a survey? Do you have an intro? Maybe you can help them with how they can find you and get more info.
You can go, there's a couple of places you can go. WeCorrectED.com will take you to a survey to fill out. WeCorrectED.com. But if you just want to contact us through the clinic, there's two websites to get us at. The clinic website is SWCOFUSA.com, SWCOFUSA.com. But if you really want to know about RegenMax, which is the protocol that treats men and women, it's RegenMax.com. And if you want to go there and contact us through there, I'm happy to answer these questions. We have a lot of patients that have had prostatectomies. that are back in the saddle doing great, having great sex. We had a guy that was radiated and didn't tell me he was radiated until halfway through the treatment. We weren't getting much results. And then all of a sudden, 7 months in, he comes in with tears saying, I had sex with my wife for the first time in 8 years. So it was a beautiful thing. I thought it was going to be one of our failures, but it proves the point. Your bodies are designed to regenerate. You just have to hit the right triggers. Knowing what your body is wired like, the DNA process, that gives you the wiring diagram. Then we just got to hit the right triggers, and you will reach it. Your body will fix itself.
Josh, any closing remarks that you might have?
Yeah, when can I book my appointment?
Well, I want to ask the guys to come back because I know a lot of women, because I'm in that age range, where a sneeze can be a ooh, or a cough can be a quick grab. I think we may have to send a DNA team down to have, you know, some previews, and we can come back and talk all women's health and testimonials. So we may be making a sojourn.
Those issues, we're not talking a long period of time.
No, I heard that. I'm like, you
Yeah.
know how many women would love to just have a quick procedure, and rather than all the pills and all the dryness you get from the pills and all the pads and all. I mean, if you added up all the pads, all the embarrassment, all the laundry and all that, but you could get back to sneezing with confidence or working out, trying to do jumping jacks with confidence. I
Yeah.
mean, that's
Yeah.
huge.
3 or 4 laser treatments literally can fix incontinence. Again, depending on severity.
Of course, I'm just talking being, you know, guys, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Always to our founder, Cash. You always bring the most interesting people with the greatest conversations. Dr. Jeff, Tim, thank you for your perspectives. Thank you for sharing. You know, we had a lot of people that put questions in anonymously, and then you started seeing them come out of their shell and put their names. For all of you, yes, this can be sensitive, but it's sensitive in a way that's also really good. It is something to make you say, hey, you are normal. A lot of us deal with this. There is help. If you want it, it's out there. And we've got resources for you through the DNA company to understand your hormones and the whole psychological piece and how you metabolize. And then also for places that are doing innovative, patented, demonstrated results, you know, 9 out of 10 are getting back in the saddle. I mean, what a blessing. I know that a lot of people that need to find you and are blessed that they did. And we look forward to your success and looking forward to having you come back.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Aging is natural, man. We're all going through it together, men and women. So just talking about it is a great first step.
It's not as bad as you think.
It's not personal, and we can fix it.
Thank you.
There you go. Take care, everybody. God bless. Good night.
Love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.